Before it became a warning, Babel was imagined as a dream, a tower so high that its summit seemed to challenge heaven itself. The story survives in only a few biblical verses, but the image it left behind is enormous. One city, one language, one monument, and one ambition too large for the earth. This is the mystery of the Tower of Babel, not simply whether one exact tower stood, but why ancient people imagined architecture powerful enough to challenge the sky. To search for Babel, we have to leave certainty behind and enter the borderland between scripture, archaeology, empire, and memory. In the biblical tradition, the story unfolds after the flood, on the plain of Shinar, where people gather to build a city and a tower. The story emphasizes not mountain stone, but baked brick and bitumen, the technologies of a river civilization building from mud and fire. That detail matters. In Mesopotamia, mudbrick was not weakness. It was civilization made from the floodplain itself. The tower in the story was more than a structure. It was a collective act of identity, a desire to make a name that would not disappear. But in the ancient Near East, towers that reached upward were not fantasies. They had a real architectural form, the ziggurat. Ziggurats were massive stepped temple towers, built as sacred mountains in lands where natural mountains were far away. They did not function like modern skyscrapers. They were not built for offices or observation decks. They were cosmic architecture. At their summit stood a temple, a place where Earth symbolically met the divine world above. Every terrace lifted the eye upward. Every staircase turned movement into ritual. Every brick made the city visible to heaven. For many scholars, the most powerful architectural echo behind the memory of Babel is Etemenanki, the great ziggurat of Babylon. Its Sumerian name is often translated as the house of the foundation of heaven and earth. That name alone sounds like the architecture of Babel, a building imagined as a connection between worlds. But we must be careful. Archaeology does not give us the Tower of Babel exactly as the story tells it. It gives us ruins, texts, dimensions, and echoes. The biblical Babel and the Babylonian Etemenanki are not the same kind of evidence. One is a sacred narrative. The other was a real monument in a real city. The power of the mystery comes from the space between them. Babylon itself was not an ordinary city. At its height, it was one of the great capitals of the ancient world. Its sacred center revolved around Marduk, the city's chief god, and the temple complex that anchored Babylon's religious identity. Near that sacred center, Etemenanki rose as a vertical statement of power, devotion, and imperial order. Ancient sources and modern scholarship describe Etemenanki as a multi-stage structure, possibly around 90 meters high in its best-known reconstructed form. For a mudbrick world, that was not just tall. It was an act of disciplined impossibility. A ziggurat had to fight gravity, heat, erosion, and time with nothing more glamorous than brick, labor, and maintenance. The tower's greatness depended on repetition, brick after brick, layer after layer, generation after generation. This is where Babel becomes more than a miracle story. It becomes a meditation on coordination, labor, and the fragile systems behind every monument. Someone had to plan the base. Someone had to measure the terraces. Someone had to feed the workers and fire the kills. In the story, the danger is not that humans build. The danger is that they believe a tower can make them untouchable. The tower tries to turn height into permanence, architecture into immortality, and unity into control. Then the story changes. The same language that allowed the work to rise becomes the point where the project breaks apart. The confusion of languages is not just an ending. It is the collapse of perfect coordination. A tower can survive storms, but not the failure of the human system that keeps lifting it higher. That is why Babel has lasted for thousands of years. It is a story about architecture, but also about society. It asks what happens when a civilization confuses unity with domination and height with holiness. Archaeologists do not excavate pride directly. They excavate foundations, bricks, inscriptions, drainage, and ruins. Yet even foundations can speak. The base of a ziggurat reveals the ambition of the city that built it. Etemenanki was damaged, rebuilt, and remembered across centuries of conquest and restoration. Some evidence links major rebuilding phases to the Neo-Babylonian age, especially the world of Nabopolassar and Nebuchadnezzar II. This was an age when Babylon wanted to be seen not merely as a city, but as the center of the ordered world. To build upward was to make theology visible. To build higher was to make empire visible. But mudbrick monuments require constant care. Rain, wind, conquest, and neglect turn even sacred mountains back into earth. Over time, the tower that may have inspired Babel became less a building than a memory of height. Over time, Babylon itself became a symbol, magnificent, dangerous, and morally charged. Babel survived because it gave architecture a moral meaning. It turned a construction project into a warning about the limits of power. But the story is not anti-architecture. It is fascinated by architecture's power. It understands that buildings can gather people, organize labor, preserve memory, and make invisible beliefs visible. That is why the tower still feels modern. Every age has its own Babel, a structure built to prove that limits no longer apply. The Mesopotamians did not need steel to imagine scale. They had terraces, ramps, brick, geometry, and sky. The tower's visual force comes from one simple contradiction. It is made of earth, but it reaches toward heaven. That contradiction is why Babel belongs perfectly to the world of ziggurats. A ziggurat was an artificial mountain in a flat land, a staircase of authority, a place where ritual rose above daily life. From the ground, the tower would have blocked the horizon. From the top, the city would have looked small enough to command. That view is the temptation of Babel, to stand above the human world and mistake distance for mastery. In the biblical imagination, the answer comes not by tearing down brick, but by breaking the certainty of a single voice. The unfinished tower becomes a monument to interrupted ambition. No one knows exactly what the original listeners imagined when they heard the story, but they would have known the power of cities and towers. They lived in a world where kings rebuilt temples to prove legitimacy, and gods were honored through architecture. A tower was never just a tower. It was a claim about order, language, gods, labor, and the destiny of a city. That is why the Tower of Babel still stands in the imagination, even if its bricks have vanished into the earth. It survives in art, sermons, literature, and every discussion about the dangers of building beyond wisdom. It is both ancient and immediate, a story about the human need to rise and the human failure to listen. The more we search for the real Babel, the more the question changes. We stop asking only where it was and begin asking why it had to be imagined. Perhaps Babel was never meant to be only a location. Perhaps it was a mirror held up to civilization. It shows a society strong enough to build together, but fragile enough to break when meaning collapses. It shows that the greatest monuments are never made only of materials. They are made of belief, language, obedience, and fear. And it shows that the desire to touch heaven can become dangerous when it forgets the earth beneath it. The tower tried to turn height into destiny. Instead, it became a symbol of limits. The dream was to make a name that could never be lost. The irony is that Babel became famous because the dream failed. The tower that tried to reach heaven did not disappear. It became one of humanity's oldest questions. How high can a civilization build before it no longer understands itself? And somewhere between the ruins of Babylon and the story of Babel, the ancient warning still rises.